In that house, stretched out on the bed, I'd stare at the edge of the weathered awning, the one on the balcony of the building next to ours, with the bird nest and the hibiscus stem that my wife liked so much. The border of the awning would ripple almost constantly in the wind. The fabric was all faded, and several strands hung down like hairs or tufts of grass. The scalloped border originally created a series of equal-sized waves, each one identical. Now all the waves were different. Some of them split in two, forming gaps that made them seem like a kind of theater curtain, or a sacred sheet of papyrus chewed up by time, like the ones the man sold at the flea market where I worked on Sundays. Here and there, the hem of the border had detached, creating a kind of hollow eye filled with sky. And occasionally, when the wind picked up and ruffled the fabric, it would lift that absence too. When I stared at that awning, tattered and fluttering, I'd stop thinking about the war, or the soldiers who killed my grandparents, or the journey to this country afterward with my parents. White butterflies flitting above the sea's surface, a frantic but cheerful swarm traveling alongside us, almost seeming to lead the way. At first, we lived in a camp, then in a trailer or wherever else we could, which meant I grew up in different places across the city, each one forgettable, along with my parents, my brothers, and the relatives who arrived periodically, one after another. On Saturdays, I helped my father at the flea market, fixing watches, replacing batteries or the strap or the entire mechanism. Hordes of people came to throw their money away on mostly useless objects. I was still young when my father died. Unfortunately, I hadn't learned how to repair watches, so I started selling clothes, socks, underwear, nightgowns. During the weekdays, I made deliveries for a few places, furniture, heavy boxes, appliances, but on Sundays, I also started giving a hand to the used book salesman. He'd thrown his back out, picking tobacco in the past, so he'd have me load the car, set up the tent, and break down the booth at the end of the day. There were people who'd pay absurd amounts for certain books, even if an insect had been crushed between the pages, the stain still gleaming. When I was 20, I married a girl from my country who left behind all she knew to live with me on the other side of the world. She landed on a bleak spring day, and while we waited at the airport for the train home, she was dazed from the trip and couldn't stop trembling. Sadly, I had no coat to offer her. My mother had insisted on lining our doorway and the building stairs with vases full of flowers to give my wife a traditional welcome, even though the other tenants had complained, regarding this auspicious gesture as a nuisance and even a potential hazard. I took her here and there so she could get to know the city, going on frequent walks in a nearby park filled with trees and the occasional statue. One morning, she touched the branch of an olive tree to pluck a few of its silvery leaves, and a hideous cicada with transparent wings leaped out at her, clinging to her hand and scaring her stiff. Who knows? Maybe her fear of trees developed in that moment. A month after our wedding, my wife was pregnant, and that winter our first child was born. Still, it was a hard year. I lost my mother, who died 3 days after the dentist had extracted an infected tooth. And without her around, unfortunately, my brothers and I began to fight. They decided to move to different cities, different countries even, and I couldn't afford the rent on my own. Again, I found myself living in a camp, in a crowd of other people all waiting for a lucky break.